Alright, hi class, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of reading a novel correctly and also all of the parts that go into making a novel good, and also how, to get the best reading out of it. So I've come up with a little memory trick for you guys. So the four most important parts of a novel include the plot, the theme, the setting, and the characters. The plot can kind of be looked as the overall trajectory of a novel, and so kind of from beginning to end, what happens, what that means, and kind of how the entire story pans out. The theme itself can kind of be looked at as the moral of a story. It's not always, though, immediately apparent what the moral or the theme itself is. Sometimes you won't really necessarily see the theme or the moral of the story itself until the last page, but that's kind of the fun of reading the book, is reading it to the end to kind of, see why the author themselves said a certain thing, or kind of just the importance of the novel itself. The next thing is the setting, which can kind of be looked at as the historical context of a novel. Not just the historical context, but also just the context of who the author themselves were, what the author's life was like, and kind of how that contributes to the novel as a whole. And then the last thing is the characters themselves, which is kind of the backbone of a story. I like to say it kind of gives the name, it gives names to the story itself, and the characters are what keeps us involved and emotionally invested in a story itself. So the memory trick I came up with is Peter tasted sour cherries. So Peter tasted sour cherries, plot, theme, setting, and characters. Sound good?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so the novel that I chose today for us is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I am having us read from page 1. So basically I think it's important to kind of dissect the first page of a book, just to kind of get a gauge on how you predict the novel itself will progress. And a lot of times actually the first page of a novel can give you a lot of clues as to the theme or the morals of the novel itself. So I'm handing you guys photocopies of the first page, and I will read some of it, and then afterwards we can talk it over. So, Chapter 1, page 9. 1801. I have just returned from a visit to my landlord, the solitary neighbor that I shall be troubled with. This is certainly a beautiful country. In all England, I do not believe that I could have fixed on a situation so completely removed from the stir of society. A perfect mianthropous heaven, and Mr. Heathcliff and I are such a suitable pair to divide the desolation between us. A capital fellow. He little imagined how my heart warmed towards him when I beheld his black eyes withdraw so suspiciously under their brows, as I rode up, and when his fingers sheltered themselves with a jealous resolution still further in his waistcoat as I announced my name. Mr. Heathcliff, I said. A nod was the answer. Mr. Lockwood, your new tenant, sir. I do myself the honor of calling as soon as possible after my arrival to express the hope that I have not inconvenienced you by my perseverance in soliciting the occupation of Thrushcross Grange. I heard yesterday you had some thoughts. Thrushcross Grange is my own, sir, he interrupted, wincing. I shall not allow anyone to inconvenience me. If I could hinder it, walk in. The walk-in was uttered with closed teeth and expressed with sentiment. Go to the deuce. Even the gate over which he leant manifested no sympathizing movement to the words, and I think that circumstance determined me to accept the invitation. I felt interested in a man who seemed more exaggeratedly reserved than myself. When he saw my horse's breast fairly pushing the barrier, he did pull out his hand to unchain it, and then suddenly preceded me up the causeway, calling as we entered the court. Alright, so just based off of that, what stands out to you, if anything, of the first page of the novel? Meaning, if you were to highlight some important phrases or some things that give context clues as to the rest of the novel, again, if there are any. Sometimes the first page of a novel doesn't necessarily give any really blatant cues as to the rest of the novel itself, but what would you guys highlight, or what stood out to you?
I would say that there's definitely some tension
Yeah.
between some of the characters.
So there, you said there's some
Tension?
Just speak up a little bit.
Some tension between the characters.
Yeah, this is true. There's definitely, I mean, at this point, we don't know the relationship between the characters, but without that information, Bronte does a pretty decent job of giving us, like you said, that kind of tension and also suspense as to what's going to happen next, I think. Connor, anything?
I think the character, the narrator, is pleased with their first impressions of this person, and they're
Yeah.
intrigued.
Definitely.
So,
Cool. And so this is kind of a hard question because, again, it's just the first page. But if you had to say, predict not the rest of the novel, but even just the next few pages of the chapter itself, where do you, if you had to envision a future for these two characters, what future do you predict for them?
some sort of conflict.
Some sort of conflict?
Like a
Yeah.
hostile relationship.
Yeah, I think so too. What clues give you that?
He seems more reserved than even myself.
Yeah, that's definitely a pretty good giveaway for the other character's personality and disposition. Betsy, anything? No? That's it? Alright, yeah, so, I mean, I would say that's a pretty good summary of the first page itself, and actually the entire book as itself is kind of this struggle between families and households. So I would say you guys did a pretty good job of just surmising what the rest of the novel looks like and what happens in it, so